Hello everyone, we are now finished Unit 6 in Leisure and we're moving on to our final topic, which is the site study. This year's exam is on the development of Wembley Stadium and Wembley Park. Today we're going to be looking at how Wembley Park evolved into kind of a centre for sport and recreation. To start off, we're going to look at what was available to do at Wembley Park in the late 1800s. You're going to need to rely on the knowledge that you already have from your unit about holiday and travel, and a little bit of sound and music as well, just to have a look at the image and see if you can pick out any types of leisure activities that people might come to Wembley Park to do. More than welcome to pause the video now, have a quick look, and we'll take it up in just a moment. Had a chance to look at the image. We're just going to pick out a few of the different things that you could do if you visited Wembley Park in the late 1800s. The first is to go and see some waterfalls, not something that are really common around the UK and really not common in central London, so a very nice opportunity to see something a little bit different. You could go to a park. You could hire a boat. These were quite reasonably priced. You could bring a lunch with you, have some lunch on the water, or just go out with your family or friends for the afternoon. There were opportunities to go on nature walks, and there were sometimes little picnic benches along the way where you could stop and have lunch. This was a replica of the Eiffel Tower. It was actually going to be larger than the Eiffel Tower in Paris, but it was never completed. We'll get into reasons why. It was only ever finished up to about the first level here, and it was known as Watkins Tower. And one of the last things you could do at Wembley Park was visit one of the music halls. So what we need to do is pause the video in a moment, and you're going to return to the page on Show My Homework to download your Wembley site study booklet. There is no need to take any notes for your site study. Everything that you need to know is located inside of your Wembley booklet. Now, if you have any questions about the booklet, which are quite common, you can do so by emailing your teacher, and make sure you're completing the assigned readings that are set and highlighting any information. Now, if you don't have a printer at home and you don't want to print it off, don't worry. You can highlight using Microsoft Word. When we do return back to school, you can then print that off in color, and you'll have a fully digital highlighted Wembley booklet. If you do choose to do it by hand, that's fine. You can print it off at home and just grab yourself a highlighter and then highlight that way. You will need this book in year 11. It's really important that we have the Wembley booklet and we understand all the history from Wembley, because it's a major component of our leisure exam paper. So how has Wembley changed over time? This is a video that was put out by the Brent Council, which is kind of the overseeing council of the area that Wembley is in Northwest London. So they put out a video to show its development over time. We're just going to have a quick look at that before we move into a little bit more detail about the area known as Wembley.
In Victorian times, Wembley Park was a play park for Londoners, and then of course came to fame with the Empire exhibition in the 1920s. So in many ways we're restoring the park. It's coming full circle.
You can feel a sense of community, so I feel that it's a very nice area where to live.
Wembley is now a place where people come every day. It attracts people because it's becoming a hub, a new destination in its own right. You can come to an event but have plenty of other things to do. It's a much better experience than it ever was before.
It's an enormous privilege. We are really making a difference.
Right, so before Wembley was actually Wembley as we know it today, it was mainly a rural area. It was essentially farmland. That was back in the 1850s. And if we look on a map here, we can see where central London is. And we can also see where Marylebone is. Now, many of us might be familiar with Marylebone because it is where the train goes if you go directly from High Wycombe into London. So this is the Marylebone area here, and we've got central London. So think of like Trafalgar Square, the Houses of Parliament, all that's going to be in central London. And if we do look on this map, we can see that Wembley is quite a ways away. Um, it's not incredibly close to central London or even the Marylebone area. So if you did live in central London in the kind of late 1800s, early 1900s, it'd be really difficult for you to get out to Wembley because you have to walk. And from central London out to Wembley is about 12 miles. So that's a really long time spent walking. By the time you got to Wembley, you need to turn around and get back home. So in the 1870s, the Metropolitan Railway Company, they wanted to build a line out to Harrow, and Harrow is like way over here. It's even further away. And to do that, they had to go through Wembley. Now, the owner of this land that I just circled, he didn't have an heir. He didn't leave the land to anybody. So the railway company bought it for £33,000, which was an absolute bargain. In the 1890s, a new owner starts building Watkins Tower and builds Wembley Park Station. And by 1895, 120,000 people have visited Wembley from central London. So why did people want to visit Wembley? Well, we have to think a little bit in context of what was happening in the late 1800s to be able to answer that. In 1901, it was suggested that a major exhibition should be held in London to help promote trade and show how great the British Empire was. These plans were put on hold during the First World War, and the idea was revived in 1920. And it came about in 1920. This was 2 years after the end of the First World War. And the government said people need a bit of a pick-me-up. The war was devastating. It was an awful experience. We need people to feel good about the British Empire again. So they made a plan and they acquired 216 acres of land in Wembley, which included Watkins Tower and the Pleasure Gardens, to start building all these pavilions and stadiums that could then host the exhibition. Now, the plans proposed also included a sports complex. The Prince of Wales, he was a really keen sportsman. He kind of got the interest of the Football Association, and they decided to also build a stadium. Now, the exhibition was an opportunity for nations to show off all of their country's best stuff. So you had like Hong Kong and Burma. They came over and built little booths that reflected their nation's architecture. Canada's contribution was a life-size butter sculpture of the Prince of Wales and his horse. They had to ship it across the Atlantic Ocean by boat, and it had to be in this really special refrigerated case to keep it cold all throughout the summer of 1924. So going to watch another clip. This is actual footage from the opening of the British Empire exhibition. Remember, this is 1924, so the video quality is going to be quite poor and there's no sound to it. But we can learn a lot from this video as historians. So we need to look at the reasons for the exhibition and the importance of this exhibition for British people. So keep those two kind of questions in the back of your mind as we have a look. the building of the stadium, this is an aerial shot of Empire Stadium, which now is actually known as Wembley Stadium. There wasn't like a specific day where the name changed from Empire to Wembley, but it's in the 1970s where that shift actually occurred. And you can see it looks very different to the modern day Wembley Stadium that we would know. This one actually could seat about 120,000 people, where the current Wembley has a capacity of just over 90,000. You'll also notice that if you sat behind the goals, you were completely exposed to the elements in the sun, so not always the best viewing experience. So the original Wembley Stadium was known as Empire, as we already mentioned, and it opened in 1923, and it was built in exactly 300 days for a cost of £750,000. It was originally built for the 1924 Empire exhibition, and it was planned to be demolished after the exhibition was over. There was no legacy plan to turn it into a permanent football ground or to keep it. Now, Empire Stadium had first-class facilities. It was a leader in stadium technology. It had things like safety barriers, which we can actually see here to stop people from tumbling down from the higher tiers. It also didn't have any pillars in the stadium that would obstruct any kind of view, so everyone would have a relatively good view of the match that was going on. It also had coverings to keep people dry if there was any kind of foul weather as well. So quite ahead of its time for technology in 1924. We certainly wouldn't be very comfortable in a stadium like this today, but if we go back nearly 100 years, this was state-of-the-art technology. So your job now is to make sure you've downloaded your Wembley booklet, and it's to read pages 1 to 4 and highlight any key information that you feel is important using Microsoft Word or by printing it out and doing so by hand. You need to answer questions 1, 2, and 3, and you can type these by just deleting the existing lines that are there, and you can just type your own answers in. Now, I know some people are going to say, why do I need to do this? I'll do it when I get back to school. You can see a little graphic on the screen here, and this is showing you the mark allocation for your leisure paper. This is really important that we secure this knowledge now. If you have a look, questions 1 to 5 in total, these are worth 40 marks. And we're kind of familiar with a leisure question 1, use sources A, B, and C to identify one similarity and one difference. Leisure question 3 is the same as the USA question 1. You're describing something. Question 5, this is telling the narrative across the 3 historical eras, and you get your SPAG marks. But this is where we need to focus. Your site study is worth 20 marks. It is worth a third of the entire exam paper. And there's only 2 questions, and we generally know what those questions are going to be. There's a very limited scope of what the examiners can actually ask us. So if we know everything there is to know about Wembley and we know it well, we can automatically have 20 out of 64 marks on that leisure paper. So really crucial that we download this booklet now and we get busy by doing the readings and keeping up with the highlighting.